The decision to live in wormhole systems, more often referred to as J-space, is an unusual one. In doing so, a pilot gives up the stability of stargates, reliable trade hub connections, and asset safety, providing an off-the-grid experience unlike any other in EVE Online. In addition, the lack of active local means that pilots flying in wormholes do so with significant risk of being hunted without the pilot ever knowing. Considering these extensive trade-offs, the wormhole life surely has to provide something unique and intriguing, right? Well, yes, wormholes can be summed up simply by the phrase high risk, high reward. Those willing to not only brave such a hostile environment, but to flourish and thrive in it, will find the near endless possibilities in a realm where no 2 days are ever the same. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to Wormhole 102. As the name would suggest, I do strongly recommend that you have watched my Wormhole 101 survival video first, as a lot of what I say in this video will be building upon knowledge that I've already detailed there. I will not be making further explanations if it's already covered in Wormhole 101, so consider this your fair warning to go and watch that video first. No, seriously, hit pause on this one, go watch it, I'll put a card up above and a link in the description, then come back to this one. You will need it. Alright, with that said and done, that little warning out of the way, welcome to Wormhole 102. In this video, we're going to talk about J-space systems in general. We're going to talk about what the class system means, what statics are, and we're going to talk about the 6 different types of special J-space system effects. These are things like pulsars and wolf riots, and we'll get into all of that later on because it can drastically change what kind of content you have access to and how you actually run it. Now, of course, if you do enjoy this video or find it useful, please spend that extra second just to hit like on it and subscribe to this channel for all things EVE Online, with a special leaning towards wormhole space. Now, as well, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel and keep me making content like this, you can do so by heading to my Patreon page, my PayPal tip jar, or my Redbubble merchandise store, all linked in the description down below. And finally, if you are keen on learning as much as you can about wormhole space, I'm currently working on a very special PDF that is going to be open to everyone that details absolutely everything there is to know about life in J-space. Stay tuned for that one. Anyway folks, all that said and done then, let's jump right into talking about J-space. There are roughly 2,600 known wormhole systems, each classified as one of 6 class levels, from C1 to C6. This number represents how powerful the sleeper occupation is, and therefore the kind of content that will spawn in that system. This can also be considered a kind of difficulty rating for the system, with higher numbers denoting higher difficulty. The class number will also denote how powerful any relevant system effects will be, but we'll discuss system effects later on. First of all, we need to talk about statics. Wormholes spawn semi-randomly in J-space, and they're your only way to connect between other J-space systems, or indeed to get back to K-space. But each class of J-space system will have 1 or 2 so-called static connections. These are wormholes that always lead to the same type of space. As soon as one static connection collapses, another immediately spawns. Statics can connect to high-sec, to low-sec, to null-sec, or even different classes of J-space. As an example, if a J-space system has a high-sec static wormhole, as soon as that particular connection collapses, another wormhole will immediately open connected to another randomly selected high-sec system. For example, you might find that you have a static connected directly to Jita, and when it closes, it opens back up straight onto Dodixie. It will always be a high-security system, but the actual destination will vary each time it spawns. First of all then, let's talk about that class number, because this isn't something that's directly referenced in-game. If you're flying through K-space, then you have security rating, and the lower the security rating goes, you can infer different types of combat anomaly or different types of ores, etc. being found based on that. But every single J-space system is always -1.0 security, so that doesn't really help us. And nowhere on your overview or on screen does it explicitly say, hey, you're in a class 2 J-space system. That just doesn't happen. We have to infer which class of J-space system we are in based on information around us. Now, of course, you can just take the JSpace name, the J followed by 6 digits, type that into your favourite web search, and that should tell you what kind of class wormhole you are currently inside. If you were to also be jumping around using Tripwire, which you really should be, Tripwire will also confirm what class of JSpace system you are in on its user interface. But if you're just using the in-game information, you have to be a little bit more clever. First of all, when you are jumping a wormhole into a JSpace system and you've gone to show info, there is a good bit of information we can get from that, where it says that this leads through to unknown parts of space. You know that the JSpace system on the other side is a Class 1, Class 2 or Class 3. If that information states that it is dangerous unknown space, that's a Class 4 or a Class 5 system on the other side, and if it says lethal unknown parts of space, that is a Class 6 system. Once you're actually inside the system, you can also look at the combat anomalies around you as well, and that will give you an identifier of what class you are in, because the combat anomalies are exclusive to each class of wormhole. As an example, if you were to look around and see a perimeter hangar, you're in a Class 2 system, whereas if you were to look around and see a core bastion, then yeah, you're in a Class 6, and you need to be very careful unless you're in something specifically designed to take that on. Now, looking at ore sites and gas sites is not going to give you an accurate idea here. Ore sites can spawn in any class of wormhole. The only notable difference are the shattered sites, which only spawn in shattered wormholes. Gas sites, there are 2 that are exclusive to C5 and C6, notably the Instrumental Core Reservoir and Vital Core Reservoir, but again, those technically can spawn in Class 1 through 4 as well, it's just exceptionally rare. Relic and data sites, every single class of JSpace system has its own unique relic and data sites, which are much closer to combat sites that have a few hacking boxes in them, but it should be noted that Class 1, Class 2 and Class 3 sites can also spawn ruined relic sites and central data sites, the kind you would find in nullsec, and they can spawn regardless of where that system is connected to. This means you could be in Galente space where you've been running Serpentis anomalies, you jump into a wormhole system, and suddenly you find that you're able to do an Angel data site or a Blood Raider relic site, and those could both be in the same JSpace system, so that doesn't give you a clear identifier either. Only the combat anomalies are a clear identifier, and my Wormhole PDF does have a full breakdown of which anomalies can spawn in each system. So how does that actually translate into the kind of content available and the kind of ships that you will need in order to complete that? Well, a lot of people ask me this, and it's a very rough analogy. You can't go into this with it being exactly accurate. There are different variables all around on this, as we'll come to in a moment, but essentially C1 systems are pretty basic. The combat anomalies inside a C1 system are designed to be run by destroyers, assault frigates, and maybe a basic cruiser. They're not overly difficult, but they're not particularly lucrative either. They're a nice introduction into the kind of combat that you can expect going up against sleepers, but they're pretty basic. C2 is where things start getting a bit more intense. You make good ISK in C2 combat anomalies, and you'll need something like either a fairly well-fit battle cruiser, a good Tech 2 cruiser will run these comfortably, and even a Tech 3 destroyer can run these quite nicely as well. I run a lot of C2s and things like the Svipal and the Confessor. Now, once you go up to a C3, however, things become much more difficult. This is the realm of Tech 3 cruisers, the Praxis, the Rattlesnake, the Healer. Some very specific cruisers can run this kind of content, but arguably you're going to want a small fleet or things a bit bigger. C4 becomes very much battleship-sized stuff. Again, you can run this in a fleet with logistics as well, but you're going to be looking at mainly bringing in some battleships and some more punch for those. C5 is where you start to look at marauders. Things like the Varga and the Golem are both popular in C5 ratting. These are particularly quite nasty sites, and again, you may want to bring some friends along. Things like logistics support, maybe even some E-War, that kind of thing. Class 6 systems, on the other hand, are where things become truly insane. This is where Dreadnought ratting becomes very much a thing, undocking a Dreadnought and taking on Class 6 systems. That's also where the huge amounts of money can be made, billions per hour, if you know what you're doing and have the right setup in order to run that. Now, it's worth noting that there is a lot of debate that goes on in the Wormhole community about whether C6s are even worth it, that the increase in ISK also comes at a massive increase in difficulty, and so a lot of people do just tend to stick to C5s, utilising what's called the C5 highway, because C5 connections tend to connect to each other much more frequently than they do other areas of space. You just get C5s connecting to C5, connecting to C5, so on and so forth. Now, you'll find that most people who are starting off in Wormhole life will start with Class 2 ratting, maybe Class 3. Those are your main points that you're going to be ratting and playing with solo, and then looking at Class 4 as fleet content. Class 5 is when you start to get really serious. Certain J-space systems have effects that change the nature of your ship's statistics and/or modules. These system effects only apply to Capsuleer ships. Any sleepers or structures in the system are not affected. This will appear on the buff bar above your capacitor. If you mouse over this, it'll tell you what these system effects do if you forget. You'll also get a notification when you jump into a J-space system with a system effect, telling you that certain spatial effects are modifying your ship. Again, just mouse over the buff bar and it'll tell you exactly what's going on. Now, these are 6 different types of star, in inverted commas, and they're all based on real-world science, which I think is pretty cool. The first of these is a red giant, a particularly large type of star getting towards the end of its life. Now, red giants are very specialised. While their main bonuses may not affect many commonly used modules, the large bonus to smart bomb damage and range opens up several combat strategies related to using dedicated smart bomb ships to clear fields of enemies. The other major effects, overheat effects and overheat damage, promote life on the edge and training the thermodynamics skill, as overheated modules become far more powerful than they would normally, but are also far more likely to burn out. Black holes are systems for enthusiasts of high-speed, long-ranged missile ships. These systems feature an enormous bonus to ship velocity, missile velocity, and targeting range, and a further penalty to stasis webifier strength, making it very difficult to hold down a speeding enemy even if you can catch them. However, they also greatly increase the inertia of ships in them, making it much slower to accelerate, change course, or align to warp. You can kind of think of being in a black hole as being in a dark abyssal dead space and being permanently inside one of the tachyon clouds, if that makes it a little bit clearer for you. In real life, a pulsar is a type of neutron star that is emitting massive amounts of radiation from its north and south poles, kind of like a massive beacon of light and energy. They also tend to spin very, very rapidly, making them a kind of cosmic lighthouse in effect. In EVE Online, they're very powerful systems when utilised correctly, as they provide large improvements to shield hit points and to capacitor recharge time. They do, however, greatly increase ship signature radii, enabling the effective use of much larger weapons than would be available in ordinary systems if you're hunting other players. Armor ships, on the other hand, will suffer a resistance debuff. If you are ratting a pulsar, do not do it in an armor ship. You will die. On the other hand, if you're using a shield ship, you will find a pulsar to be much easier to complete content in. Finally, as a partial countermeasure to the capacitor recharge bonus, energy neutralizers and Nosferatus are both greatly strengthened in pulsar systems as well. Wolf Riots are actually some of my favourite stars in real life, and the James Webb Space Telescope actually found a beautiful one of these recently. Essentially, this is a stage in some star's life. It's quite short and it's fairly rare, so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to witness one of these. Essentially, a Wolf Riot is where a star is super hot, getting quite small, and it's fusing some of its heavier elements to the point that it actually starts to kick off huge clouds of dust into space. So it becomes this incredibly bright and hot star sitting at the centre of a beautiful cloud or nebula. In game, however, a Wolf Riot is kind of the opposite to a pulsar, penalising shields, enhancing armour, and reducing signature radii to reduce the strength of large weapons. However, the most striking aspect of the Wolf Riot effect is the unbelievably huge bonus to small weapon damage. This applies to any small weapon system, including rapid light missile launchers. Magnetars are another type of neutron star, but rather than giving out humongous amounts of energy in those beams like a pulsar does, magnetars essentially have really weird distorted magnetic fields to them. Now, magnetars are amongst the most dangerous and sought after systems in wormhole space. While they greatly penalise weapon accuracy and damage application, those penalties come as trade-offs for an absolutely bonkers bonus to raw damage. Ships, both NPC and Capsuleer, die incredibly fast in magnetars. You have been warned. The final type of J-space system is the epically named cataclysmic variable. Now, in real science, a cataclysmic variable is a binary star system, two stars that are very close together, about the distance between our sun and us here on Earth. Essentially, one of these is usually a white dwarf, the other is referred to as the companion star, and the white dwarf, being so small and dense, essentially rips off material from the companion star via a process called accretion. This will essentially destroy the secondary star and has some really cool effects that I won't go into in this video. In EVE Online, however, a cataclysmic variable is an interesting paradox. On one hand, they enormously increase the strength of remote repair modules and capacitor volume of the ships using them. On the other, though, they greatly reduce the strength of local repair modules and remote cap transmitters. The result ends up with a system type that encourages group play, with either spider-tanked ships or heavy logistics support, but forces the use of locally cap-stable logistics and discourages capital warfare. Essentially, this is the playground of anyone who wants to fleet up. You want dedicated logistics support because your actual on-board armor repairers and shield boosters do barely anything, whereas the logistics are far more powerful. And that's basically everything there is to know about the different types of J-space systems in EVE Online. Understanding how the class system works, referencing C1 up to C6, can tell you what kind of content you should be able to clear in the ships that you are piloting. Understanding system effects is going to help you then adapt to the different styles of J-space systems. You may find that you can complete content in a standard system quite comfortably, but then going into a pulsar could really make it impossible for you to clear. On the other hand, finding a Wolf Riot might mean that the ship that you would normally use and only run C2s can now run C3s or even stronger systems based on those system effects. This is where a lot of the fun in J-space comes from, and I do encourage you to get out there, give it a try, and play around with different ships in different system effects and have a look at the different classes of wormholes. There is so much fun to be had in J-space systems and wormholing. If I can do anything to inspire you to get out there, I would. Just get out there, fly through some wormholes, try some content, make some good ISK, and hey, lose a ship, blow some stuff up, just have fun, you know? Anyway folks, again, if you are enjoying the wormholing life, do head across to my Discord. I am working on a PDF primer to all things J-space there. I would love some feedback, I'd love some ideas of what you guys think about this. Am I putting the information across clearly? Is there stuff that I've missed? I want to know, so come join me on Discord and help make that dream a reality. Otherwise folks, thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in J-space!